what is assessed, how to plan your instruction time, how best to assist students with making level skill gains and building foundational skills required on the HSC. I've broken this presentation down into the specific content areas, so reading, language, and math. Hopefully each of you can take something away that you can use. And I'm going to be mindful of our time, but I will let you know up front that this may go a little bit longer than the 1 hour depending on questions. Just a few basic housekeeping notes for the purposes of this webinar. To make sure we get a good recording, everyone will remain on mute for the duration of the call. I've left last couple of minutes for questions, so please put your questions in the Q&A section. If you hover your mouse over the bottom of the page, you should see a Zoom toolbar appear with Q&A section, and Dan's going to be monitoring this for me on the call. So for all of you who have registered, we'll send you a link of this recording within 24 to 48 hours after the call, and we'll go ahead and get started. I just want to review real quick what our agenda is going to look like today. So that we're going to start with a look at the shift in the college and the career readiness standards that have led to these TABE changes. Then we'll briefly review the TABE blueprints, paying particular attention to the high emphasis levels and the evidence-based selective response questions on the reading content. We'll take a deep dive into each of the content areas. Each content area is also going to include strategies for teaching this skill, and on those slides you will see pictures from a couple of our materials that we have here, and I'll go through some of those as we go. And finally, we'll look at resources you can use to increase student gains and build on skills for HSC test preparation, and then we'll end with questions and contact information. So getting to know the TABE, I'm just going to talk real briefly about the shifts in standards and the TABE blueprints. I'm hoping most of you are pretty familiar with this, but in the event that you're not. With the advent of Common Core and the revamp of the GED and college and career readiness standards, this created a shift in both literacy and math. And literacy is now focused around 3 key areas. Complexity, which is exposing students to complex text in both instruction and assessment, with an emphasis on frequently encountered academic vocabulary and the disciplines of literature, science, history, and the arts. And evidence, which is reading and writing and speaking grounded in evidence from text, literacy, and informational. Students must be able to cite evidence from texts and claims through careful analysis and create well-defined claims. And finally, knowledge, which is really kind of putting all of these things together. With respect to the math standards and some of the shifts, you're going to see these are going to fall under 3 other areas: focus, coherence, and rigor. Students have to go more deeply on concepts, incorporating procedural skills and fluency and understanding understanding mathematical problems and applying the skills as they are learned. For coherence, they're going to have to move in a scaffolded fashion to build coherence and their previous skills so that each new concept becomes an extension of the previous idea. And finally, rigor, which means that the students not only have to understand the mathematical skill with procedural fluency, but they must also be able to apply it in the content of real-world applications. Many of you are hopefully familiar at this point with the TABE blueprints. They consist of pie charts, which provide an overview of how the test is broken down by key domain and by percentage covered. This is an example of the M-level reading content. As you can see, this is broken down into integration of ideas and knowledge at 11%, key ideas and details at 47%, and craft and structure at 42%. In digging a little deeper into the blueprints, we also see how the standards are covered in detail and by specific standards. So for instance, in this example, the standard covered at M level, the one that I've kind of marked here in red, is under the key ideas and details section, and it's 4.ri.2, which is determine the main idea of a text and explain how it's supported by key details, summarize the text. This shows us which area of the domain and the standard is reflected in this case, it also pertains to college and career readiness level 4 standard. I also want to make a a quick note on here that this is also designated as a high emphasis level. So we're going to look at that in a little greater detail next. The high emphasis level, this equates to the number of questions on the test related to that standard. It is not connected in any way to rigor, but you can use these in reading and language to focus instruction and prepare students to respond. Let's take a look at the reading standards and the skills under the reading content. As we look at the reading standards, you're going to see that there are 12 reading standards for level E, 15 for level M, 19 for level D, and 20 for reading level A. If we take a 30,000-foot view of the TABE content areas covered, we can also see how these are organized by level to give us a deeper understanding of how and where we should spend the bulk of our planning and instructional time. As an example, if we look at key ideas and details in craft and structure, we see that both of these appear at all levels except for level L. This means that most of the test items will come specifically from these two questions, or two sections, with fewer questions coming from the integration of knowledge and ideas section. If we break this down a little bit further, we can see that by level, key ideas and craft and structure cover the test at almost a 1-to-1 ratio at each level, with slightly more weight given to key ideas and details. Additionally, in looking at the total number of test questions, we can see that between 70 and almost 90% of the test questions come from these two sections, key ideas and details, and craft and structure. And so this again shows us where we can put the bulk of our instructional time so that it can be targeted. I do want to make one distinction, and that is hopefully you're also familiar with the evidence-based selected response questions that do appear on the reading test. These are important for two reasons. One, you'll notice that the number of passages grow from level to level. The test taker is reading 4 passages at the L level and grows to 9 by the time you get to levels D and A. And 2, the number of evidence-based selected response style questions also grows along with the number of passages. They come into play beginning at level E with 3, and by the time the test taker is on level A, they have to respond to 15 of these questions. If you take a look at this at a little bit deeper level, practicing these types of questions frequently can go a long way to helping students earn the most points, as is evident by this chart. Students can earn a total of 6 points if they successfully answer both parts A and B correctly at the E level. But look at how many points they can earn at level D, which is 18, and at level A, it grows to 30 points. So completing the reading test on any level requires the test taker to read a fair number of passages, all within 100 minutes. And this is where reading fluency and comprehension skills become really important. So what can you do as a teacher to increase students' skills, particularly in these two areas? According to a study entitled Understanding Adults' Oral Reading Fluency, there are 3 factors that contribute to an adult learner's reading development and acceleration. And these are word reading efficiency, or the ability to read connected words quickly, accurately, and with expression. Vocabulary, which includes vocabulary knowledge, knowing the meaning of words as they are read, and or the ability to determine the word's meaning through context clues. This also includes the knowledge of sight words for low-level learners. And lastly, auditory working memory, which involves taking information which is presented orally, processing it, and then storing it in one's memory to be recalled later. An example of this might be listening to and following directions and remembering terms and information presented. Particularly this last one, auditory working memory, also comes into play and is typically defined as a learner who struggles with reading, has a deficiency in a reading area, and or might have dyslexia. Looking at reading levels as an example within Table 11 and 12, this is how influence of oral comprehension looks at this level. In 3 key categories, you can see how skills concentrating on oral fluency are connected. In phonics and word recognition 3.rf.3, which is designated as a high emphasis skill, you can see here that it concentrates on knowing and applying grade level phonics, as well as word analysis and skills in decoding. In key ideas and details, sections 2.ri.1 and 3.ri.2, which is also a high emphasis skill. These include reading comprehension applications as they relate to nonfiction. And in craft and structure, 3.ri.4 concentrates specifically on determining the meaning of general academic words that connect to learning on grade level vocabulary and domain specific words. And all 3 of these are noted as high emphasis level skills. If we look at how the skills are stacked by level, we see for reading that at level E, students begin with a basic skill like asking questions about a topic to demonstrate an understanding of key ideas in a text and reasons for support of ideas in a text. They then move to more complex skills at M level, where they're exposed to both literacy and informational text passages as they move towards more complex skills, such as referring to details and examples in a text when explaining the text, quoting accurately from the text when explaining what it says and drawing inferences. And additionally, skills like interpreting and synthesizing text and comparing text structures and points of view are expanded at this level. At D level, students are expected to move to more advanced skills like citing textual evidence to support analysis, as well as inferences drawn from text. They'll need to develop more sophisticated analysis and assessment skills related to text connections and various points of view. And finally, at level A, students move to application and analysis-based skills like citing strong and thorough evidence to support analysis and inferences found in text structures and evaluating their effectiveness. So what does all this have to do with instruction? And let's talk about some practical strategies that you can use to develop key reading skills with your learners. Reading challenging text closely, rigorously, and intentionally. Do this by providing opportunities for students to discuss ideas related to text passages, have students annotate passages as they read them, work with students to analyze key skills, show students how to identify key ideas and supporting evidence, and demonstrate how to find supporting reasons within text, and have students practice these skills independently. Focus on informational and reading passages like this one in both guided and independent reading practice. Too often, students read too quickly or skim passages. They should really practice reading informational passages more than once, identifying the main idea and supporting details as they go. This is where skills like annotation can help. This example comes from our TABE Mastery Series Level M. This is Unit 1, Lesson 4, Identify Main Idea and Summarize Text, and this is page 41 if you have one of these books. As you introduce frequently used and grade appropriate domain-specific vocabulary words, show students the different ways to use various context clues to derive the meaning of a word. Help students understand how Greek and Latin root words, as well as prefixes, suffixes, and affixes, provide clues to the meaning of words. Use glossaries. We have these now built into our TABE Mastery Series, both the student book and the teacher guide, and our Journey to Success series, which is seen here, along with dictionaries and other reference guides to help students understand words. This example comes from Journey to Success series, Level 6, Unit 3, Lesson 7, and it's on, appropriately, tropical diseases. Allow students to build skills through a variety of interactions with new words and ways to express their use both in context and independently. This particular example comes from our Journey to Success Unit 6, which is the same unit I just referred to. Have students write more effectively in direct response to text. Use examples that integrate critical thinking types of questions and open-ended responses to teach learners. Provide background knowledge. This may be especially helpful for topics related to science, historical events, and technical text. Additionally, work to show students how the two-part questions are phrased, and why they may require a deeper understanding of the reading passages. This is an example of some background knowledge that comes from our Journey to Success series, level 4, straight out of the teacher guide, which you can download for free out on our website. And this is an example of a two-part question that came from our TABE Mastery Level M reading book. So let's move on to the language section. The language section covers 10 standards at level E and M, 12 at level D, and 8 at level A. Taking a 30,000-foot view of language, we see patterns similar to reading with the TABE, where there's an emphasis on convention. Oops, let me go back here. Conventions of standard English at levels L through A, vocabulary and acquisition and use, and text types and purposes at nearly the same percentage for level E through level A, and knowledge of language coming into play briefly at levels M and D. In fact, depending on the level, the focus is targeted in 3 key areas. So conventions of standard English, vocabulary and acquisition, and use and text types and purposes, with nearly all the test sections coming mostly from these 3 domains. Let's take a look at the progression of the language content on TABE 11 and 12, beginning at E level. Students are introduced at basic writing skills, common vocabulary, and simple and compound sentences. At M level, they build their knowledge. The emphasis here is on subject-verb agreement, sentence structure, and variety of sentences, a deeper understanding of the specific grammar and spelling rules, along with using precise language when writing opinion and informative pieces. At level D, learners begin to grasp more advanced punctuation, sentence patterns, writing with clarity, and various style forms, including writing well-written and supported arguments and information pieces. There's more emphasis at this level on the informational text and real-world application. And at level A, grammar and usage is more difficult as students move to using parallel structure to create meaning with the proper use of phrases and clauses, use of a variety of punctuation, including semicolons, colons, and use of quotations. They also hone their writing skills and develop and write discipline-specific arguments and informative texts. So some practical strategies to develop key reading or key language skills with your learners include the following. Use writing and punctuation to reinforce grammar skills. As you can see here, I'm using a little bit of humor. Let's eat grandma, let's eat, comma, grammar. And punctuation really can make a difference and save lives. Review any grammar rules that may apply. So you'll see an example here of one from page 17, or from page 17 of our D-level language book from TABE Mastery. Teach word learning strategies that students can use independently to derive meaning. Promote the development of word consciousness and keep learners actively engaged by having students use newly learned words in various ways through speech, writing, and reading. Employ a variety of direct and indirect vocabulary instruction. So for instance, methods like introducing them to Latin and Greek words, affixes, prefixes, and suffixes can be very useful. And many of the reading and language skills for TABE 11 and 12 can be taught in tandem with one another. One example may be to teach student domain-specific terms, including context clues or using root words. And focus attention on trouble spots for students through assessments. This is an example of an action plan from our TABE Mastery book. We also have these included in our score boosts. And these can help assess student trouble spots, so you can use the practice test and the score boost or post-test from the TABE Mastery to help you assess at other intervals as your learners are trucking along. So now let's do a deep dive on the math content of the TABE series. Here you're going to see a variety of different standards covered, and these are very different from reading and language. They include both standards in some cases of the higher level math along with substandards. So at E level, there are 38 standards that are covered. At M level, if you've wondered why this particular test section has presented a lot of angst for you, there are 51 standards in here. At D level, there are 40 math standards, and at A level, there are 14 math standards with 27 substandards that are tested. In taking a 30,000-foot level view, if we look at math, we see a couple of things going on here. You'll see that geometry is tackled at all of the levels. Expressions and equations and ratios and proportional relationships, statistics and probability, and the number system are really at levels M and D at varying levels. And there are some areas like functions that only come into play in one or two of these areas. And this makes planning and teaching math a little more difficult. On the TABE 11 and 12 section, I did want to make one quick point about high emphasis levels, and that is to say that there are fewer of them than on the reading and language sections. So these may be a little hard to target and teach to. They're primarily located in the two higher levels, so sections D and A, and less so at level E. And as you notice here, there are 0 high emphasis levels. At M level, there are, however, medium and low emphasis level areas in M level. And we look at the coverage by domain area, we see that geometry, operations and algebraic thinking, measurement and data and expressions and equations may yield results if you particularly focus on these areas with greater emphasis. You see here that geometry is covered at 64%, looking across all the levels from L to A. Number operations in base 10, yes, that number is correct, it is 115. Operations and algebraic thinking is covered at 100%. Measurement and data is covered at 54, and expressions and equations is covered at 33, but focused on levels M and D. In breaking these down by level, we can see at level E, a total of 32 questions comes from 4 key areas. These include 8 questions from measurement and data, 11 questions from number operations in base 10, 9 questions for operations and algebraic thinking, and 4 questions from geometry. At M level, with so many standards, 38 questions come from 6 domain areas. These include 11 questions from number operations specific to fractions, 6 questions for number operations in base 10, 6 for measurement and data, 6 for expressions and equations, and 5 for operations and algebraic thinking. While there's only 4 that are covered at geometry here, I did want to make a note that you can teach geometry beginning at L level and going all the way through A level. So I did want to keep this highlighted here. Notice too that there is only 1 question on ratios and proportional relationships covered at this level. So it may or may not be beneficial for you to dive too deep into that at the math level. If we move on to D level, you'll see that 36 questions come from 5 sections. These include 9 questions each from statistics and probability and the number system, 7 questions each from expressions and equations, as well as geometry, and 4 questions from functions. I noticed too that there are 4 questions here from ratios and proportional relationships, but if you're not covering it in level D or in level M and you move to level D, you may not need to cover it in level D either. And because functions does come into play at level A, I just wanted to make that as one of the highlights. If we move on to level A, you'll see that 36 questions come from 4 domain areas. These include 11 questions from functions, 11 from algebra, 7 both from statistics and probability, and geometry. So you can see that geometry gets a little more elevated here at level A. And then there are 5 questions from numbers and quantity. So let's take a look at some practical strategies to develop key math skills with your learners. And some of these should and could include the following. Build procedural fluency. Effective teaching of math builds fluency with procedures on a foundation of conceptual understanding. And so that students over time become skillful in using procedures flexibly as they solve contextual and mathematical problems. And this is an example here. I believe this comes from our M level TABE mastery book. Promote reasoning and problem solving. This by implementing tasks that engage students in solving and discussing math problems that promote mathematical reasoning and problem solving and allow multiple entry points at varied solution strategies. That goes a long way into helping facilitate the reasoning skills and the problem solving skills that your students can port over into lots of other areas, not just with math, but also with their reading. Facilitate mathematical discourse among learners. This helps to build a shared understanding of mathematical ideas by analyzing and comparing student approaches and arguments. You can see here these two particular passages that I have listed on this slide actually come from our TABE mastery level M book, and this comes from the teacher's guide. So we're giving you some prompts that you can use in order to execute some of these skills. Workplace examples are also a great way to make the concept come alive and help students relate real-world situations to mathematical symbolism. You'll see in our books that we have work links as call-outs. This is a call-out that actually comes from our teacher guide in our TABE Mastery series. So this is another way for you to be able to just make those connections to your learners. So let's talk about how you can build your TABE 11 and 12 resource center. I did want to make one note, and so for this one, this is a picture of a web page. It is the Institute for Professional Development of Adult Learners, otherwise known as IPDA if you are Florida-based, or if you're not. And this stands for the Institute for Professional Development of Adult Educators. It is their professional development site in the state, and you'll find lots of information on this site that you can use. This includes free webinars that you can watch back. It also includes handouts for some of these, and they have a variety of topics, not just the ones listed here, but I did want to hone those down to just a few that are targeted to the TABE. They have not done an unpacking or breaking down of the TABE yet for math, but they have done it for both reading and language. And so this is a great way, if you have not gone to the site, this is a great way to get some additional professional development for yourselves. The site link for this is www.floridaipdae, which is IPDAE.org. Next, many of you may be familiar with our Score Boost for TABE, and I did want to make note that most of our books for TABE Mastery are currently out and available. While both of these books cover many of the same concepts and skills, you're going to find plenty of information in both of these to help your students understand and master many of the skills you're going to need to make gains, as well as build skills for the HSC tests. And that includes all three of the tests, whether you're taking the GED, the TASC, or the HiSET. Our TABE Mastery series includes one student book for each content area at each level, along with one teacher guide for each content book at each level. All the books for levels E, M, and D are currently available. So if you are trying to order these by a class set, which come in sets of 10 of each book, those are available for E, M, and D. We are awaiting the final versions of level A, and those should be done and scheduled for early delivery in April. And as far as I know, that has not changed even with the current situation that we're in. In looking at the series itself, I did want to point out a couple of features that we have in these now. So in the student book, you're going to see a pre-test. There's also unit reviews as well as a post-test. So if you're trying to pre and post-test your students, this offers you a way to do that. Lessons are structured to provide multiple examples, so we go way deeper at these levels into understanding each of the skills and the content area. In the teacher guide, you're going to see step-by-step instructions on how to administer each lesson. In the student book, you will find marginal features, which are going to include work connections and real-world tips along with think prompts. We do make notes of these also in the teacher guide. There is a student action plan that helps to focus students on targeted skills and to aid with measurable skill gains. And along each of the units, you'll see where we have vocabulary lists for each lesson. And then in the back of the student book, as well as the back of the teacher guide, you're going to have a glossary to help facilitate your vocabulary building and knowledge. In the teacher guide itself, you're going to see a number of lessons and pre-lesson activities that are going to include prerequisite skills. In some cases, we tell you which unit to go back to make sure that those skills are enforced if you find that a student is deficient in a skill. You're also going to have background knowledge, so you can use these to facilitate your lessons and accelerate learning. We offer standards at the top of each lesson in the teacher guide along with learning goals. You'll see differentiated instruction, guided instruction, independent practice notes that will provide many of you with tools you'll need to execute the lesson. And we provide whole group activity suggestions, work link connections, and the same vocabulary lists and glossary that are embedded in the student book are also in the teacher guide. So you don't have to use two books to look those up. Score Boost for TABE, many of you are probably familiar with this series. I wanted to say that it includes lesson strategies, guided practice, independent practice, and TABE practice tests, as well as its own student action plan. You can use these in combination and in conjunction with the TABE Mastery series. You'll see similar lessons noted for each of these, but if you have a student who maybe only has a couple of things to target on their area of focus, you might turn to the Score Boost first. Or if you have a learner that needs to go way deeper in the lesson, you may turn to the TABE Mastery first and follow that up by using the practice test out of the Score Boost so that you know whether or not your learner has completed and sufficiently mastered those skills. Out on our website, I want to just talk about a couple of these wraparound support materials that we have available. So they are going to include a scope and sequence for both, as well as correlations. You'll see that noted here on this slide. When you go out to the main page of our website, you want to click on this TABE 11 and 12 tab. That's going to have all of our Score Boost as well as our TABE Mastery content. And when you go out there, once you click on one of those books, whether it be Score Boost for TABE or TABE Mastery, you're going to see our free resources and correlations lists. You can go out here and you'll find the Score Boost or the scope and sequence for Score Boost. We also have the correlations. There is a crosswalk out there. We have an additional TABE webinar that you can watch, and we also have a study guide. I did want to make note of this study guide because we have updated it, so it does include all of the TABE Mastery series that we've released to this point. It also includes crosswalks to many of our other books like Journey to Success and Challengers. So you can target your instruction using more than just one series in here, and it will tell you which pages to go to target that particular section of the TABE that your student may need some reinforcement. And all of this can be found at www.newreaderspress.com and by clicking on the TABE 11 and 12 tab. I wanted to just talk briefly about each of these individually. So if you take a look at our scope and sequence, you're going to see where these are aligned to the TABE blueprints and the college and career readiness standards. These can be used to help you pinpoint instruction based on the student's DRC profile and area of next focus. Our crosswalks will help you build lessons using both Score Boost and TABE Mastery, and to help you build a bridge to both the TABE and the college and the career readiness standards. And lastly, we have correlations to all of these based on the product to help you complete the picture. These are going to be listed by content area and by level. You'll see here where in some cases we combined the levels together. So if you are looking for the Score Boost and you want to just take a look at it for levels M and D, you'll see that on the correlations page. A brief announcement here. So if you are looking to order any of our TABE materials this month, we're offering 10% off. That includes all of our TABE materials. That's all of Score Boost and all of TABE Mastery. So please contact your sales rep to get either a quote, a sample, or to place an order. And we know that these are trying times, but I wanted to just let you know that our warehouse is open and fully staffed. We have contingency plans in place for both our warehouse and our customer service reps, and our customer service reps are also working full time. So you can dial the 1-800-448-8878 to talk to a sales rep, or you can also contact your sales rep for that as well. And any quotes that we do for this will be valid for 60 days. So I would certainly get a quote this month for any TABE materials that you plan to order, even if you're not going to pull the trigger for another 60 days, or you don't feel like you can get a PO in there. And obviously we'll hold quotes where maybe we go a little bit longer with this COVID virus. So Dan, I see that we have 7 questions. Do you want to take a minute and we'll answer some of these questions?
I've been trying to keep up with all of the questions, but one big question and one recurring theme is, are you going to share this PowerPoint?
Yes, I can certainly share this PowerPoint with everyone.
Okay, so if you send that to me, I'll make sure that on the email that goes out with the video link and everything like that, that your PowerPoint is on there as well.
All right, sounds
Daniel Rogers is asking, is there a way to preview the pretest and pretest action plans on each of the TABE levels? I think Daniel might be referring to in the TABE Mastery book. And so I sent a link to locate your sales rep on our website. And I just suggested that Daniel reach out to his sales rep and request a sample. But Daniel, if that is not the series that you're talking about, those are not the pretests you're talking about, just type in chat. Karen Reed would like you to go over again the differences between TABE Mastery and Score Boost TABE. Okay,
so just to make it short and sweet, the TABE Mastery is going to be way more in depth with more examples. You're going to have both a pre-test and a post-test in that book series. We don't have that built in to the Score Boost for TABE. Score Boost for TABE is going to give you quick examples. So for instance, any one topic that we cover may only take about 2 pages worth of information, versus on our TABE Mastery, each lesson is going to be around about 10 pages per lesson. So to give you an example, our book for D-level math runs about 327 pages long, and our book for M-level math runs about 287 pages. The other key difference between these two are, if you have a student learner that only needs to maybe target a couple of quick things, like for instance in math, you want to cover just a couple of quick things, you might want to turn to the Score Boost series first, because that Score Boost series will target just one particular area rather than giving them a full book of everything that is covered on that particular test section. You will also see in TABE that we have a practice test. This is in the Score Boost for TABE, that we have a practice test. So I would either, if you haven't had an opportunity to give your learner a pretest or the DRC profile, you could use the pretest from TABE Mastery, and then you could use the post-test to see how that learner is doing and use some of the unit reviews within TABE Mastery at various intervals. And in addition to that, if you wanted to see if your learner has mastered 100% of that content, then you can certainly give them the practice test out of the score boost for TABE.
Okay. There was another question from Karen Reed, and Karen is using the Endeavor series and can no longer get all of the books and wants to know more about using Endeavor for reading instruction to prepare for TABE. And I'll let Karen Welch answer some of this, but I will say that we now have, and it's a new feature, a new service we offer, but we now have a print-on-demand service. And so if there are some old tried and true materials from New Readers Press that you like, but they're going, they're backlisted or going out of print, we now might have the ability to provide you with those through print-on-demand. The best way to find out if we do, if you're really interested, is to contact your customer service. I posted that number in the chat box, or to contact your sales rep. I'll repost the link where you can locate your rep. And Karen might want to say something more about Endeavor versus something newer like Journey to Success.
Yeah, I'll just talk briefly about Endeavor first. If you are using that series was founded and it has a foundational base in the evidence-based reading that most people should be using at this point. So it's going to cover the 5 basic topics in reading, including alphabetics, reading vocabulary, reading fluency, reading comprehension, and writing, all in one book. So you can certainly use that book. The difference being that if you are preparing a learner for one of the HSC tests, that content and a lot of the passages are not going to be mirrored like you're going to see on some of those tests. So for instance, in Journey to Success, that series, we have units on science, social studies, and literature, which begin to prepare those lower level readers for HSC test preparation, and provides a lot of content in those specific areas. Journey to Success is also evidence-based too, so you're going to see basically the same types of components. And then in addition to that, we've also added in that series workplace and life skills in there. Like Endeavor, it should break down your vocabulary into kind of a tier 1, tier 2. So if you're using that to build vocabulary skills, you can certainly continue to use the Endeavor series. You may not find, though, that the passages are in line with more informational reading-based content, which is where the TABE is headed and is right now, as well as the college and the career readiness standards for HSC test preparation.
Okay. Let's see, there are a couple of other questions. One person wants to know if there will be, hang on, I'm sorry, I was trying to do 2 things at once. Is there any sort of assessment available in ScoreBoost?
We do have an assessment available in ScoreBoost. It is the practice test, which is embedded in the back of the book. You're also going to see some unit reviews in there too. So if you're currently using ScoreBoost, you can use it. You're just not going to find a pretest in there, and you won't find necessarily a post-test per se, but it does offer some good practice, and you do have the ability to use it in combination with the TABE mastery.
Okay, so Terry Taylor, and I don't know if this is the Terry Taylor I know from Elkhart, Indiana. If it is, hello. But Terry asks, oh, he was the one that asked about ScoreBoost assessment. Somebody else wanted to know how high of a level does Journey to Success go in reference to the TABE levels?
We currently have it at an NRS level 6. So let me get my TABE
Chart.
out
Yeah,
to tell
yeah,
you
I don't
what
have
that
my
equates
text.
to in terms of the different levels, in terms of the scale scores.
Okay, and while she's looking for her chart, someone said, how closely does table 1112 correspond to the GED and HSE tests? And what about score boost? Is there a score boost similar to GED? So yes, number one, TABE 910 was replaced with TABE 1112 solely to align to the same set of standards that all of the HSE tests now assess. So TABE 1112 assesses those college career readiness standards. Now, what you have to keep in mind is those high school equivalency tests are at that higher level of the CCRS standards. And so if you're in TABE level A, you're definitely aligning to and assessing the same standards. But with TABE, students take the locator. If they aren't at that level yet, then they are set at a lower level, still aligned to the standards, but the goal then is to prepare them to get up to that HSE level. So you're still working with the same set of standards. You ratchet down the rigor a little. You work with them at that level and you advance them until you can ratchet it back up and get them to that level. Score Boost is also available for GED. I think I've answered that question, but Karen might have her chart now, and she might have some more information to add.
Yeah, so right now, the Journey to Success is at a NRS reading level. We started at basically a 0 level and go all the way to an NRS reading level 6, which if you're looking at a grade level 6, it falls under NRS grade level 6 falls under a scale score of 617 all the way through 800. And if you're looking to see what level that is, it's around about the top of the M reading level and going through D. And I would say a little bit of A, but we're not going to have the content that you need at level A quite yet. We are planning on putting together, I believe, a 7 and an 8 in this series, which should be done sometime. Dan, do you know if it's the end of this year?
I do not know right now, I'm sorry.
If it's not the end of this year, it'll be the beginning of next year.
One thing that we're hoping to do still this year relates to another question, and that question is, I'm scrolling back through until I find it, but somebody basically just said, what about digital learning preparation for TABE? And New Readers Press is in the process of developing TABE-specific preparation and a digital version of that. We do have a number of digital learning options, and for example, our New Readers Press online learning pre-HSE course would certainly, because TABE and the HSE test address the same standards, would certainly help you with your TABE level DNA students. We've got GED and high set prep online as well, and TABE is coming. We just don't have it yet digitally. Anything else, Karen, you want to add to that? I think we're about out of questions.
Yeah, I would just say that we're primarily waiting to finalize the creation of our TABE mastery before we moved and shifted everything online. And we also want to make sure that we have an app or some kind of something that people can use mobily on a phone or device, so that you don't necessarily have to shift from a computer to a laptop or a tablet and or go through a lot of trouble to render what you see on your phone on the screen, and that students can use that in an app mode. So those are sort of some of the, that's what we're working towards right now.
Okay, so I'm just scrolling back through the last few questions. I was typing and I might have missed this. Did you address whether or not, what kind of assessment is available in score? Yeah, never mind, you did that.
Yeah.
Okay, I think, wait a minute, here's one more. Okay, I'm going to read this and then it's not making sense to me initially, but okay, the point allocations among topic areas within, say, math change from level E through level A. Do the allocations at the higher levels match up fairly closely with the corresponding allocations on the GED?
Yes and no to a certain degree. I know that Florida did a crosswalk between the TABE and the math. So, you know, it depends on which area of focus you're looking at. It's not a direct one-to-one. So I wouldn't say that everything that's covered on the TABE is also covered at the same level or depth of level at on the GED. You know, ideally, if you work on some of the higher level things that we talked about in this presentation, mostly procedural skills and just having your students make that leap from the concept to the application, those types of skills definitely go a long way towards moving your student from just TABE to GED test preparation, for sure. And before we take any more questions, Dan, I just wanted to give everybody my contact information. I cover the Southeast, which is Alabama, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and Tennessee. This is my direct phone number if you need to reach out to me, as well as my email. And if you are in a state other than the 5 listed here, you can go to www.newreaderspress.com and click under Find a Sales Rep to find the rep that covers your area. And we are all working full-time through all of this, so feel free to reach out to them. We're also being able to provide samples to everybody as well. So if you are going to request a sample, those will go out. I'll just tell you, you might want to designate your home address rather than your school. If your school is going to be out for this a longer period than the 2 weeks.
Thank you. And Brent responded that you thoroughly answered his question about the point allocations corresponding between, you know, TABE level A and GED. So thanks for that. And also, by the way, TABE level A does correspond very nicely with task if you happen to be using that test. And that was by design because both are published by the Data Recognition Corporation. So if you're in a state that uses task and uses TABE, then that's a nice match. Okay, so that is all of our questions. Karen, thank you very much. You did, you put a lot of work into that. I know you did, and you're always very thorough, and it's very appreciated. So I will end the recording now and end the meeting. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Sounds good. Thank you, everybody, and have a great week.